Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Also, below this video, you can get £50 for swapping your UK electricity supplier to Octopus Energy, and this is a particular note if you drive an electric vehicle. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Refracted Curvature, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Good morning, everyone.
Hey, good morning.
Hello, hello, hello.
How are you?
Mighty fine, pretty good. Nice to have an enthusiastic start from Discord. Very good, very good. Any evidence of physical geometric sphere edge horizon, the one we were discussing in the pre-show that can't be measured? It's formerly known as Earth curvature.
I think refracted curvature should do this one.
Hello.
Well, if it was geometric, you could derive a radius from it.
Hey, Howard.
And is
Hello.
it? Hey, Arwin.
How's my sound?
Very good. And is it geometric, so you can derive a radius from it?
Oh, no, black swan.
Yeah, further to that, we're navigating on a flat plane.
But I'd like to ask John to give a short testimonial here as to why the black swan brought him over from the globe side.
Well, because you can only measure what is, and I thought I was measuring the geometry of Earth, the horizon, but that's, the minute that went away, then the only measurement I have left is it's flat.
Well, expand on how the black swan actually opened your eyes. What did the black swan prove to you?
It disproved that the horizon was geometric, so I couldn't derive a radius value to assert that there was Earth curve.
Might as well go through the black swan argument. So if the Earth was a sphere with a radius of 3959 miles, then every distance to the horizon, that's the geometric Earth curve edge, could be no more than 1.2 times the square root of the observer's height in feet. That's a la the geometric curve calculator mathematics. Now, the distance to the horizon in the black swan is beyond the geometric limitation of a sphere at radius 3959. Therefore, the horizon is not Earth curve, and the Earth is not a sphere. Any shape would necessitate a physical geometric limitation to your view that would be capable of measurement. And our horizon isn't Earth curve.
Now, why everybody hasn't responded the way John has responded to it is beyond my understanding. Because if you do not have a geometric horizon, there is no Earth curve, and Earth is not a ball. How they all didn't come, their eyes immediately open up is beyond my understanding.
Well, they want to retain
You
their
wanna know
fundamentalist
why?
religious globe faith. So, the automatic discounting of anything that contradicts your faith is going to be prevalent in a cult-like worship of a religion that isn't real, in this case heliocentrism. So they don't want to relinquish it, so they just reject anything out of hand that debunks their claim. Their claim is we've got Earth curve. Their claim is we can measure Earth curve. Their claim is that the Earth curve blocks things in the distance. The Earth curve doesn't block things in the distance. It's not a physical geometric limitation to your view. It's beyond the limitations if it was. Therefore, the Earth is not a sphere. We don't have an Earth curve edge horizon. and we don't have any geometry at the horizon to measure and assert that we're on any shape other than a flat plane.
Well, I think Newton said it best when he said they lack a competent faculty of philosophical reasoning.
Yeah. You can't, in reasonable cognitive faculty, appreciate the horizon to be something it isn't. It's not Earth curve. Now, that's a fact. It's the end of the argument, really. There is no more argument in terms of whether or not Earth is a flat plane. There's no geometric horizon, and there would be if we were on any shape. Doesn't matter if it's a banana or a sphere, we'd have a geometric horizon to observe, and we don't. There's only one conclusion you can draw, and that's that we're on a flat plane. Now, when you navigate around the flat plane, utilising the geometry of the flat plane, then you get around without any issue. As long as you assume that what you do when you measure it, that would be utilise its flatness, is actually the case.
I'd like to take a stab at Neil's proposition, why people don't get it. But people do get it. The people I talk to who aren't anti-flat earthers get it. They get that black swan argument right away. It's the people that we attract on the show in the chat and whatever means otherwise, they're the ones bracing against it. So our recent memories are with the anti-flat earthers. They're just not going to let go of it. But when you take it to the average person and they don't excuse you right away because of the stigma of flat earth, they'll say, well, I know you, you're smart. Why do you believe in flat earth? If they have that conscience about you, they get it. So the only people I haven't been able to share it with are people who are part of the consensus-driven conspiracy. Oh, he's a flat earther, so he's okay. So I can't reach them because the media's already got them, blocking any avenue of conversation, and anti-flat earthers. But everybody else who's willing to have a discussion, well, yeah, that makes sense. Well, wow, I never thought of that. So they get it, Neil.
Yeah, but the anti-flat earthers are the kind of people who will tell me that my reference frames I don't claim and are absolutely required by a sphere Earth to make a claim that it's spinning are ruined because we've debunked their claim that Earth will turn underneath objects not attached to cause Coriolis deflection. We point out that there is no Coriolis deflection to observe, and they tell us that our reference frames, that would be flat Earth reference frames we don't need and haven't got, are ruined. That's the extent they'll go to. They'll debunk their own claim in the first instance rather than concede that we've debunked it. Black Swan's so different.
I've never heard you say any argument for reference frames to hold the position you hold. It's their position, and it's so embarrassing they got to cast it on you.
Yeah, once it fails, they project the failure of their globe model onto us and tell us that our reference frames we don't claim have been ruined. You're like, no, there are no reference frames that we're going to be claiming because we're not claiming we're spinning. You are. You have two of them, Earth turning underneath the other, to observe drift at 15 degrees an hour according to the globe claim. We point out it doesn't happen, and they say, you and your reference frames are ruined. Here's an example of someone not drifting. Yeah, wonderful, other than the globe claims that you will see drift, and we don't. So you showing me someone moving but not drifting doesn't help you, other than giving you an excuse to beg the question that we're not going to see this affect the globe claims. That would be Coriolis drift. Well, you saying that we're not going to see it and assuming we're spinning anyway doesn't help you. It's just a begging the question fallacy. But to do that, you've got to assert that my reference frames are ruined when you show we don't have them. When that's our argument. We say we don't have two reference frames to show drift. So you think that's me making a claim that we should have them? Idiots. They'll deny their own globe claim to get around the fact that they can't prove it happens.
I remember watching Neil deGrasse Tyson in a setting with, like, he's in a high-rise office and there's a big window pane behind him and he's in a chair and the other person in the YouTube videos in a chair. And Neil leans over and says, the Earth is spinning this fast right now? And obviously you don't see anything that proves that. No one feels the spin. It's kind of like accepted and believed, but there's no proof for it. Then the same Neil deGrasse Tyson will go and say that in the Cincinnati Bengals football game, when the field goal kicker kicked the ball and it was going through the uprights, it was Earth turn that helped it a smidgen bit, because he did a quick math and he saw the way the stadium was set, the north, south, east, west version of that argument, and it was a quarter bit of a turn of the Earth that caused it to dink off the left upright. So this same guy is saying there's two reference frames, the inertial and the non-inertial. But in the office, he's saying you can't tell. But in the football example, you can tell. Well, what about the hot air balloon? What about the airplane?
The effect that's claimed is coriolis drift. That is an observation of things seeming to drift because you turn beneath them. So, for example, if you launch a helium balloon from a roundabout, as you turn beneath it, it looks like it's spiralling up into the air, when in reality it's just going straight up if there's no wind. Directly up. Well, it's not spiralling, you're turning underneath it, which makes it look like that happens. Yeah? Now, let's say there's a string that's hundreds of meters long coming off the helium balloon as it goes up. Yeah? As you turn beneath it, you will still hit the string that's coming off the bottom of the balloon as it goes up. Now, you'll see that string come towards you. It's not, it's just going straight up and the string's just extending upwards. But from your vantage point, it looks like you're moving towards the string as it goes up in the air. So that's a deflection from your vantage point, an apparent deflection. You see it happen. You see the string coming towards you, and then it lightly grazes over your head, and then you spin away from it, then it comes back again. Well, that's all because you're turning underneath something. That's Coriolis effect. Well, that is the effect Globe Earth claims to have. So when you say, what about balloons? Well, if Earth has Coriolis effect, then like with the roundabout, a hot air balloon takes off what is claimed to be a rotating surface. That would be Earth. So therefore, we're going to move towards it as it goes up then. Oh no, that doesn't happen. Yeah, that's us debunking the claim that the globe has Coriolis effect. Enter anti-flat earther to tell us that my reference frames are ruined, that I'm not claiming and actually debunking. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety? That would be Earth spinning.
Nope.
You're going to need R for that.
You are going to need R for that. Any evidence of the R value, Earth radius?
You're going to need an axis turning, which doesn't exist, so no. You're going to need R for that.
Now you're going to need curve for that.
Yeah, you will need a geometric physical sphere edge for a horizon to acquire the geometry to get R as measured by Al-Biruni. So yeah, you're going to need Earth curve for that R value. Yeah, we've debunked that though. I still can't get over Arwin's excellent point yesterday. We were praising Arwin and saying how much we missed him in the yesterday. He came in and pointed out that when you're making the claim for an angle measurement on the surface to how far a star is above the horizon, for example, that when you claim that on the globe after the fact, after making the measurement, the claim from the globe cannot have you even holding the sextant anymore. The angle's taken from the centre of the Earth. In other words, it's a concession on their part that you can't do this on a globe, because to do it on a globe involves having the angle come from the centre of Earth, when you're actually holding a sextant on the surface. So that summary was given by Arwin after Brian's logic, who's just come in, and 10th Man got this argument to the point where we could understand it well enough to concisely summarise it. I say we, it was actually Arwin.
I'm not sure if I'm the first one to bring that point up, though.
Adam was, who's just jumped. As soon as I mentioned it, Adam and Brian, the two main players in this argument, joined the hangout. So as much as I'm giving praise, it was originally 10th, then Brian, who made this point clear. And then Adam summarised it in terms of how that mathematically translates into a bait and switch from the surface angle being measured to an assumption of a central angle twisting through the centre of a sphere. In other words, you're no longer holding the sextant when you claim that degree of change. You're not holding the sextant to claim the degree change, even though you're measuring it on the surface. Well, that bait and switch is when they say, well, the angle's no different. If it's stars at an infinite distance, the angle's very little difference between what we're actually doing, which is angle from the centre of a sphere, to what you're actually measuring. That's what Bob the science guy said. Now, when he did it, I didn't notice that what he's actually doing is baiting and switching an angle measurement on the surface, true with a sextant, true angles, straight lines measured, to something that you cannot physically do anymore. So to put it mildly, you can't do this on a sphere, and Adam pointed out the bait and switch. So Alvin just pointed out and said, so what they're actually saying is you can't do this on a sphere. Literally, even in depiction, it's not being done on a sphere. It's being done at the centre of a sphere that you're not holding a sextant at. But Adam,
Right.
10th,
From
Brian,
I'm
Arwin, and most importantly me, take all the credit for this.
Yeah, well, my emphasis point was that first they use the sextant, then they measure up these angles, and then in the model, suddenly they moved the actual angle point away from the sextant, like as if in their model, suddenly they throw the sextant overboard in the water and then assume it's going to sink to the center of the Earth. That's the part that really stood out to me.
Great summary. But wouldn't be there if it wasn't for Adam, 10th man, Brian, you know, and obviously me, because I'm very integral to all this. Not at all.
Well, you're touching upon what might be the slogan for 2022 right here.
The year of the sun.
Yes, because see, they've got Hipparchus led everyone astray by saying everything's at an infinite distance. So they've got Eratosthenes and everybody else saying light's coming in parallel. Well, with light coming in parallel in their mind, but not in reality, the angle at the surface matches the angle at the center. There's many problems there, as you've already noted. No one's at the center with a sextant, so that's a begging the question, and it's ridiculous. So really, the measurement's from the surface. So if the measurement's really from the surface, is light coming in parallel still? No, light is coming in divergent. So they're going to lose on every single point. There's nothing to hold on to once you break it down. Light doesn't come in parallel, so it destroys that fantasy that the angle from the center matches the angle on the surface. And no one's at the center with the sextant. The sextant is on the top of their so-called sphere with a curved bottom. And since it's a glorified protractor, it can never work with a curved bottom. Protractors do not work with a curved bottom. They have a straight 180.
I wonder if Hipparchus was actually saying it's like, you know, how they ascribe things to people that point out the faults. He was really saying, there's no way that's possible. They'd have to be an infinite distance away. And they were like, Hipparchus just said they're an infinite distance away, so put him down for it.
Oh, that was done. I can't remember who it was, though. Jaren originally pointed it out. It was a similar sort of thing.
Tycho Brahe.
Brahe, right. So they can't possibly be at that distance. They'd be absolutely enormous. Brahe says they're enormous. You can't possibly ascribe innate gravity to this shit. Don't ever associate my name with this. You know what we'll call it? We'll call it Newtonian. Bastards. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Well, it should be over there, but it's too clouded to be sure where it is or whether it actually exists when you don't see it.
Alrighty then. Anyone from Discord? Distance to the sun? Any flatties in that want to claim it? I thought when we started talking about triangulation, we'd be inundated with flatties claiming that they could get the distance from this. Right? No one else?
Shouldn't we know that
Go on.
it's an apparent position? So how do you triangulate an apparent position that's always moving?
Spot on, I couldn't have said it better myself. But that doesn't stop a lot of... I don't want to use a derogatory term that our anti-flat earth opponents use for us when they stereotype us with these people. So I don't want to be too derogatory. People who have a model of a flat earth and therefore ascribe a distance to the celestial object. Yeah, like I say, I thought they'd be in here in a heartbeat going, hang on, we'll use this to claim... What do they say it is? 4,000 kilometres, something like that?
Something like that. But that was like in the olden days of like FE, wasn't it? Like around closer to 2015, like.
Yeah, when the controlled op narrative was the main thing coming out. Yeah. Back in 2015 when I first came to this subject, it was like coming through a dinner queue. Here's your tray, Here's your model. Here's your equivalent of gravity. Here's your controlled op narrative. There you go. Now go and eat. Right? And don't be surprised when you hold up any of these things if people have already got arguments figured out to make you look stupid with them. Next. Here's your model. Here's your gravity. Here it all is. Slop, slop, slop. Yeah, they did divvy that out nice, didn't they? Gave us distances to the sun, gave us models, gave us all sorts of things that we wouldn't ascribe to now, which is things like domes.
Yeah, 3,000 miles away. That's what I heard. It was it was smaller and local, 3,000 miles away.
What I was going to say is, just before you were saying it there, that that calculation of a 3,000 or 4,000 mile away sun was done by ballers originally, and flat earthers just grabbed onto it. They just handed us a big straw man. That's what happened.
Correct.
Back when we didn't know what debating was.
Spot on. Yeah, exactly correct. So they do the exact same triangulation and then insert R and say, look, it matches up with our assumed distance. You go, oh, right. When you triangulate and then insert R. So you just assume that the surface is curved, pushing the distance out massively. But if you don't do that, if you don't insert the presuppositional R value, you end up with 4,000 kilometers high on an apparent item that we don't know what it is and is moving and moves as you move towards it, etc., etc.
Well, what they do is they do a 45-degree from both sides, angle from both sides of. I think this is how they do it. 45 degrees. It doesn't really matter how they do it, because if you use an angle as a height measurement for the sun, then does that mean the sun is less high and more high at different times of the day? Do you know what I mean? Because as soon as your angle changes, your distance changes. You know, the angle can only give you a GP. It can't give you a height to any of these things. God knows what height they are, what they are.
You'd have to exactly. You haven't got enough to do that. You'd need to know the size of it or the distance to it first, to then be able to give you the other one if you didn't have it. But we haven't got either, so it's just a guessing game. Now, does that mean that you can't triangulate with it? No, it definitely still works, but it just doesn't mean you can extrapolate out the height from it. It's not reasonable. People do.
Yeah, well, I mean, the further away from you its GP is, the lower it is to the ground in that belief. You're not going to way, and the closer it is to, its GP is to you, the higher it is. If you go by using angles, angles are for, you can use them for a distance like that with the stars, or you can use them for angular size measurements. That's it. You can't use angles for actual heights.
Right.
Of objects you don't know, of unknown objects.
Exactly. If you've only got its apparent size, then it's basically in vain. As I say, it doesn't stop people asserting it. It doesn't mean that it was intentionally given to flat earthers so that when they assert it on their model that's been prepackaged on the dinner queue, slopped into their trays and then forced down their throats without even thinking about it, at that point, when they insert R, you've just got a false dichotomy fallacy to argue about. Which one's right? Well, neither are right, but if you're already arguing that you can triangulate the position and they automatically beg the question of a sphere, it's win-win for the glober. A lot of the arguments that you will find yourself battling against as a flat earther are stereotyping fallacies. QE beautifully summed this up the other day. You know, it has a habit of doing it. Every argument starts with R. That's QE. You know, I originally thought that was actually Validation Boy, and then after about a year of giving him credit for it, QE said, yeah, that was me that gave him that. Nevertheless, you know, he has a way of summarising these things in terms of what's required, in this case R. But in terms of the argument structure, it starts with a stereotyping fallacy in almost every instance. Flat earthers think this: I'm going to debunk that which you, because I'm saying you are a flat earther, because in name only, therefore you ascribe to everything that everyone who says that they're also a flat earther ascribes to. That's just how it's going to be, because my argument's structured around debunking a stereotyping fallacy. So you say dome. You say 4,000 kilometers sun. Yeah, so I'm going to debunk those things. Says the glober or anti-flat earther. Any scientific evidence of gravity? Oh, go on. Put some more on that. Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say at the end is that the whole pre-assumption of height using angles, well, as I said earlier, was done by ballers first, and then they handed it to us. You see, on your flat Earth model, this is what the height of the sun would be. Do you know what I mean? That's what we got. So there you go. There's your 4,000 miles or whatever rubbish. Do you know what I mean? But this is when flat earthers thought that there was a conversation to be had with the opposition. They didn't realize that the opposition were straight from word go out to absolutely destroy us.
Yeah, the assumption that people are open-minded and want to be demonstrated incorrect and haven't got such a high degree of pride that they're going to reject it out of hand and have been pre-primed to ridicule beyond what is normally socially acceptable, which I find quite fascinating. But there we go. There's all sorts of other things happening in more current media that are more overt than that. So maybe I won't focus on it too much, but I will focus on Retro Bill's question, and I'll put it to the panel. Pop quiz. Can anyone on the panel please disprove the idea of a downward vector in 2 words or less? Thank you very much for the super chat, by the way, Retro Bill. I'm sure you heard me stuttering and stammering around asking for PayPal donations yesterday, because it has actually been a really tough month, but nobody likes to admit that when you're e-begging and asking people to hit the PayPal link. So thank you very much for the super chat, Retro Bill. I really do appreciate it.
Relative density.
I think of another one now. Gas behaviour. There you go.
There you go. That's not bad. Gas behaviour. Anyone else want to have a bash at that?
Helium balloon.
I can almost do it in 2. I'd have to put an apostrophe. Vectors relative.
About my arse.
That doesn't really debunk the downward vector in 2 words.
I just felt it was an appropriate response to anyone claiming a downward vector.
You, as in what is produced by your arse. This is getting pretty rude.
No, as in, no, you are joking, aren't you? A downward vector, my arse, as in, I'm a farmer, questioning it. That would be my response. It's
ding ding.
It's a reversal again, isn't it? It's a reversal of the proof. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where I just gave gas behaviour as an example. For what? To disprove something that you can't claim prove in the first place, that there's a downward vector. So it's.
No, I totally appreciate it, but he's giving me money. I'm not going to point out that.
Yeah. A tricky question, then. Really good question. Maybe a few more. Can we have a few more?
I'll do it, though, because it seems like I'm being rude to him behind the scenes. So it's the positive assertion that there is a downward vector. So in reality, Retro Bill, it's down to the person making the positive assertion to actually prove their claim. Now, we can debunk it after the assertion's made, but, you know, the positive assertion's on them. So by inference, when you say, how do you debunk it? It's like, well, it hasn't been proven and it's their claim. Nevertheless, we can still offer up that information. And I think helium balloon or gas behaviour or there's a whole bunch of them. So I'll just read out Retro Bill's chat, though. He goes, ding, ding, ding. All right, answer earns you $10. Well, thank you very much, Retro Bill. I really appreciate it. Also, J Mel's24, hope I've said that correct, says, keep the lights on and the show running. Indeed. Yes, indeedy. Thank you very much indeed, both of you, for your super chats. Really do appreciate it. So, any scientific evidence of gravity? Don't all go at once.
No, because that would involve, well, I don't really know what that would involve because gravity's description continually changes. So, no.
I would like to kind of expand on this subject a little bit today on account of the fact that over the last couple of days, I did get a little bit of sticking comments, which I always like. That might sound strange. I'll qualify that before I go on. So, if you're over the target, you get flack, right? So when people are critical of something I've said, I'm like, oh, okay. maybe I'll focus on that a little bit more. But in terms of my explanation that we have got a quantum realm scientifically validated, and that completely debunks Einstein, which completely debunks Newton. Well, given that that's the case, would it not suggest that the consensus science, also experimentally valid when you talk about certain aspects of quantum mechanics, is the new now? It's the new hotness, whether we like it or not. Therefore, there's no room for heliocentrism in that paradigm. It kind of must fade out from here on in. You can't keep propping up something that's been experimentally debunked, and that experimental debunking is part of mainstream scientific consensus. What do you think? I know we've talked about it over the last couple of days, but I want to focus on it a bit more because it alludes to the understanding that this is going to happen, and therefore they're letting us do what we're doing. That's why I'm not being penalised as a YouTuber, and I can actually make a living, albeit a bit of a crap one this month.
No, I have to agree. I mean, it's as you always say, hey, don't look at that thing over there that we're censoring. We're going to censor the hell out of this thing we keep on promoting. Do you know what I mean? It kind of says a lot, don't it?
Well, it hasn't made sense for the most part throughout the time on YouTube doing Flat Earth. None of it really made much sense to me. But it just takes time for you to get through some of the lies about experimental science. You know, until QE dropped on the scene and started to explain how they'd utilise these magic words of science when they weren't actually using the method. If that stage hadn't come, I wouldn't be able to casually ponder my way through the idea that the mainstream consensus science still is experimentally led. That is the direction that the world has gone. And, you know, it's not going to be the case that people come along and, other than the heliocentrists like Tyson, who are going to, you know, potentially say, well, that's not quite right. Well, it's like, yeah, you'll say that because it's debunking your worldview, but it is experimentally valid, unlike your pseudoscience. So, unfortunately, deGrasse Tyson becomes a dinosaur fighting to stay alive.
Well, I reckon that he's going to move with the times. That's what I reckon he'll do. You know, he'll just throw his hand in the air and go, we were wrong. Science can be wrong about stuff. And then, you know, tell a joke. Everything's happy.
Show the waistcoat.
Yeah.
The other thing that got me a bit of grief in comments, I'll ask the question first. Any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
There is no evidence whatsoever in the history of that.
What we don't often talk about on this show is the ISS. And the reason we don't often talk about it is because you can't have gas pressure without a container, and the footage claimed to come from outer space in a sky vacuum is automatically fake. It's also very easy to see through the cinematography and stage techniques used to produce the internal footage from places like the ISS. If you've got any sort of cinematography background, you should spot it. I'll segue slightly here. Any of you guys watch or are subscribed to Rob Ager?
No, but I've heard you speak of him.
Rob Ager's a film critic, and a very good one in my opinion. Breaks down a lot of not just Stanley Kubrick movies, but the ones I like most, because I like Stanley Kubrick, are his breakdowns of those movies, including 2001. And I'd really love to see someone like him, who's definitely not a flat earther, breaking down the old moon landing footage. It's just a propaganda film. Now, I hope you'll all agree with me on this, because I don't really have that much trouble convincing people that the moon landing was faked anymore in 2020. I did in 2015, I assure you. I got a lot of crap from family and friends when I brought the subject up. Now it's almost taken as read. So, given that that's the case, it'd be really nice to see someone like Rob Ager pulling apart old NASA footage as a movie, rather than as you know, a propaganda piece pretending to be real. Even if he did pull it apart as propaganda, I'd just be fascinated to see that. Anyway, that was an aside note to my actual point, which was when we talked about the ISS, I got a lot of flack for saying that we don't know what it is, And the stage show in a sky vacuum, as I've said already, is completely fake and bunk from the offset, so you don't have to debunk it in that regard. But what you're left with is just a light in the sky that moves across the sky. Why would we automatically assume it's a man-made whatever? It just could be another light in the sky that just doesn't behave in the same way as the other lights behave. Now, when there's an anomaly with things like, I don't know, retrograde motion, that's like, well, we've got a semi-coherent explanation for it, and maybe the model will subtly change or whatever when it's changed from geocentric to heliocentric with these sorts of anomalies. But with the ISS, I think it was just a step too far to explain, because that is what it is. It's a light in the sky, and as optics have got better, they've improved what they claim it is, tin can in the sky. But I don't see as having any reason to automatically assume this thing's been put up there by us. But that, like I say, seemed to me like the level of flack I got for it meant that maybe I'm over the target with something with that. You know, like I say, we don't often talk about the ISS. Any further comments on that? Any more thoughts?
Are you just talking about it as a light in the sky that may not be man-made, or are you looking to talk about the internals of the ISS?
The internals of the ISS, no, they're already bunk. It's stage show, high wires and all, on film sets and green screens. That goes without question. We don't need to discuss that. The internal shots are claimed to be internal to a tin can in a sky vacuum. So before I even get into the stage and cinematography aspects of it, which is what most people focus on, I can say the area that it's claimed to be in is a fake place. It's like saying, well, let's take apart the mechanics of the internal shots when the place that they're supposed to be is Narnia. I don't need to do any of that. It's supposed to be in Narnia. Hello, we haven't got Narnia, so it doesn't matter what they say the mechanics of the sledge are. It's in Narnia. So it's in space. Space is fake, so I don't need to go through the internal shots. But we are still left with the light in the sky, Brian. Now, you started off by saying, are you suggesting that it's not man-made? Like, why are you automatically assuming it is man-made, just because the ISS is claimed to be?
No, I was just asking the question of what direction are we taking the conversation? That's all. I wasn't accusing you of suggesting anything. I know you're just bringing up the question.
So, all I'm saying is, without any prior information, you go out one day and go, oh, look at that light. And it's gone. And that's it. That's what you've got to go on.
Well, if it was man-made, what would it prove as far as the nature of the debate we're having about the Earth?
Absolutely nothing. It's only claimed to prove things because it's claimed to be in a sky vacuum, heliocentric model included, in an orbit, heliocentric model included, and taking pictures of a sphere Earth, heliocentric model included. All three are bunk. All three are debunked by the second law of thermodynamics, none of which are ever covered on this show, very rarely, unless an opponent who also, if they are a fan of the show, won't bring up, because they'll know how quickly the argument dies.
Well, I just wanted to point that out before we got into conjecture about it, you know, because it's not really proving anything, you know.
No, if you proved it was, as Brian suggested last time we discussed this, a balloon in a jet stream, okay, that's nice. Proving what now? Nothing. You don't need to disprove what it is if it is man-made and give an alternative explanation when it's claimed to be in a sky vacuum. And yeah, I'm glad we've disposed of that. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry to cut you off.
Well, going on the pre-assumption that it isn't man-made as a speculation, let's just say, right? Maybe it's some kind of is it a watcher of us or something? You know, the place is created. If this place is created, then whatever that is, could it be watching us for some reason or monitoring something? I don't know.
I know.
Is it?
It's God's cap.
Come on, Adam.
It's Aslan. He's waiting for the right time to introduce his wardrobe-based transport system, because he keeps checking on us periodically, so that's what you see go over.
You're a smidge quiet, by the way, Adam. Shout out to Michael Kahn. He says, God bless Nathan and all on the panel. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate your support, Michael, who's also one of my patrons.
There was a serious bit to that. So we're back again, aren't we? Trying to think, not justify anything for it, but trying to use our imagination, which likes to be used to conjure up a methodology with the known stuff we do know of how we could fake it for them.
Yep.
It's kind of indicative of the level of their argument, unfortunately, for them, isn't it?
Yeah, it's structured in the same old way, exactly, Adam. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics? Tap, tap, tap. This thing on. Any evidence? No? Astrophysics? Anybody hear me? What's going on?
No, sorry, I was away from the phone. Sorry, no.
No, all they got is an observance of something, but nothing more than that.
Any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Well, you're going to need R for that. And after all the R's you didn't have for all the previous questions about a sphere, no.
Well, that concludes the housekeeping. I like that 40-minute housekeeping session. Another one of my patrons smashing the super chat. Let's just bring this up on screen before I read it out. Bear with me 1 second. Shout out to Ben White. The so-called ISS does look similar to the claimed object. You can actually see the shape when zoomed in from here on the ground using a P900. Yeah, agreed. Last time we discussed it, Ben, I actually suggested, again, this got me stick, but for a different reason, that people go and check out Red Retrix footage, which is excellent. And it does resemble what they claim it is, based on what the shape is in the submerged pool that they've got. You know, when they've got that layout of actual tin cans in water, that's what it will resemble when you take a picture of it. Now, I'm saying that over the years, they've progressively changed the story about what's up there, how it's got up there, and we know for a fact that it is all lies. They're not sending anything up there because up there doesn't exist. It's Narnia. Therefore, what have we actually got? Well, we've got the fact that they have lied continually about tin cans floating in orbit. Now, I would suggest that over the years, as optics have improved, people have got a better look at what that shape is. That blurry shape that vaguely resembles what they claim is a tin can here in a pool. And likewise, like I say, as the optics have improved, they've said, oh, that one's going to crash land and we'll have to put another one up that's a little bit more elaborate. So another shout out to Michael Kahn, who says, the ISS is a controversy for the supernatural light we see, the angel of the bottomless pit. I don't really follow that, Michael Kahn, but thank you very much indeed for the super chat. Really appreciate support. Also, 2222, ISS, yes, you can see something up there, and how far away is it? What does it prove? Spot on, 2222. Thank you very much indeed also for the super chat. And also Mike808, partial payment, tuition fee. Thank you very much, Michael. I really appreciate the support. And indeed to 2222 and Michael Kahn. Thank you very much indeed, all of you, for your super chats. Really do appreciate it.
Well, let's see if we can generate some more super chats. Can you go to Master B and put up the slide? Brian and I were going over this in the after show yesterday. And then Brian, I'm going to have you do this, all right?
The after show, I believe is called the Ever After Show.
That's right.
Okie dokie. Right, you're on screen.
Yeah, all right, Brian, you got it?
Not yet. Actually, you should probably do it when I try and join in, because there's a lot of kind of activity going on around me at the moment, so there'll be background noise.
All right, no problem.
I'll help you when I can. Okay.
Kiwi came on and talked about why did they do another zenith over the observer. And so here's a slide in my research of the sextant. And here you can see they're trying to show a curve, and yet they got that gray or so shaded circle of equal altitude. And they're saying it's a 90 degree from the star to the observer, which would be the red. And of course, the blue is the GP of the star. Well, this again fails to support their model, because if that distance from the GP of the star to you is a right angle, then that radius has to be straight. And that's why they put 90 there. And that whole circle of equal altitude has to be flat as well. Now, the co-altitude is what you're trying to get with the sextant, because you're measuring, with your sextant, and it's 60 degrees. So you minus that from 90, so that's 30. And then you times that by 60 nautical miles, and that's 1,800 miles in nautical miles to the zenith of the star, the GP of the star. Now, what's cool about this slide is it answers, why do they have a zenith over your head? Well, number one, all zenith means is directly above you. So in this expression in this slide, they just decided to put it in there. And this brings to what Brian was saying yesterday, it creates a box with two right angles. So it's there for the taking, but at the same time, it doesn't help them, if you know what I'm saying, because you can say, why do they point the sextant at the horizon to get the angle? Well, because you can't do it without it. You can't measure your own zenith. Where are you going to point it at? So what you do is you point it at the horizon, a flat, straight line, horizontal, and there's your baseline straight from you all the way to the GP of the star. And then you can backwards do it this way and say, oh, well, in that case, I could do a right angle directly above me. But the sextant works the first go-around way.
Just a quick shout out to Paula from the chat. She's just given us a quick comment. I'll just bring up the chat so you can read along. She says, thank you very much, Paula. Actually, zenith means the highest point an object in the sky will reach on a given day and location. Thank you very much. Also,
Agree with all of that.
Shout out to Wandering Eyes 11, who says, what's that word? Obligated FEG tuition. No obligation, but I really appreciate it. Thank you very much indeed. And indeed, if you're smashing the PayPal link, again, thank you very much. I assume you want to remain anonymous if you're smashing the PayPal link to support me. Thank you very much if you have.
So I don't know if Brian wants to jump in, but I'd like Adam to comment on this if he'd like to.
Yeah, I was just holding. So as I look at that from a straight geometry point of view, it's fine on a flat plane, but if you look at what's being drawn and represented there, the bottom line horizon, one that goes from yellow through to orange, the one that defines the 90-degree angle from the observer to the GP up to the star, that 90 degrees cannot, from a geometric point of view, in terms of what's been drawn in the picture, be 90 degrees. Because it's 90 degrees onto a curvy line, okay, which is an impossibility. I say that geometrically that diagram's a mess. It doesn't add up because the 90-degree line can't be a 90-degree line, because they're claiming that the line that takes you from the observer to the GP is curved based on a rate of r. It's a great circle route, which means that can't be 90 geometrically, because it's just a mess mathematically. You're asking to forgive this, forgive that, ignore this, ignore that, and then you can use playing a trig. Well, you can't, because you're trying to put it on a surface, and that corrupts your angles.
Maybe I can direct the next super chat towards Brian. It's about dip correction. So Al Junkie says, eating nachos, salsa is sour, need dip correction.
Very good. Very good.
Yeah, good scoop on that one.
Very good. Good scoop.
Hey, I got some more slides to validate what Adam just said. Yeah, that slide is a mess.
Okay, I've
Could
got
I
your
just
next
say
one
one
with
thing on that slide?
how the
Yeah, go.
hold on one sec. I've got the next one up, which is how the sextant actually works, and I'll just preface it just to lead us back in as I've shouted out a couple of super chats and stuff. So Adam's last point was to say that this line, which is alluded to being curved, won't give you 90 degrees at this point and 90 degrees at this point. Now, it's a bit too far away for me to see, but correct me if I'm wrong, the one in the distance, the angle in the distance, has got a 90 degree marked on it. Am I wrong? On the last slide, the one before the one that you're about to talk about?
That.
But
Yeah.
it can't be 90. If this is a curved line, this is not 90 degrees, and this is not 90 degrees. And as Brian was saying yesterday, you're trying to form a box, the bottom baseline, giving you a zenith, and the star a GP to its zenith, both of which must have 90 degrees for this triangulation to take place. If this line is curved, you cannot achieve 90 degrees here, and you cannot achieve 90 degrees here. Therefore, this is bunk. It doesn't work this way. On to 10th Man's first slide, how the sextant actually works. Take it away, 10th Man.
Actually, let Brian finish on that slide, and I'll take it away after that. He wanted to say something.
On the slide before, Brian.
Yes.
Yeah, you don't even need to really show it again, Nathan. It's just those two zeniths, due to the surface being underneath them being curved, have to diverge. And that is the claim from our opposition. The zeniths are always divergent, and the claim is that claim comes from the zeniths meeting up at the center of a sphere. So there is 90 degrees is an absolute impossibility when you have divergent zeniths. So if they need 90 degrees, then there is no such thing as divergent zeniths.
Yeah, further affirming that you wouldn't get the 90 degrees, because if this line is bent, the zenith that meets it isn't meeting the surface at 90 degrees if it's on a bent surface. So these two, therefore, will not and cannot and aren't claimed to be parallel. But for triangulation, they must be, and are depicted here as being parallel, even with a little 90-degree box. But that simply isn't possible if this surface is curved. Any more to add on that, Brian, and then I'll move on to the next slide, if not?
No, Nathan, that was everything. Thank you.
Okay, right, third time's a charm. How a sextant actually works. Over to you, 10th Man.
Yes, so I made this slide. I've shared this in the past with Adam and Brian as well. And I mean, the sextant is a glorified protractor. Here you don't have a curved baseline. It's going to actually work with this 90-degree box. So there's the sun. You can see the degrees of distance based on 3 different sailboats, just to give an idea of how it works on a flat plane. And then you got the box saying it's a 90 degree. So the GP of the sun is here. And first sailboat is, you can see 60, 45, 30 degrees all the way to the last one. You need that 0 baseline or 180, so to speak, that a protractor gives you. And that's how you get an angle. You need a vertex. Now, if you go to the next slide, I took liberty to do how this other slide that they messed up. See, sextant can never work on a curve, like Adam said. How the sextant cannot work is the title of this slide. So now you got the same sun, same GP, same 90 degrees, as they say, it's a right angle, and yet the sailboat on the curve would be well below that plane that you need to achieve an angle. So if they show it this way, it's embarrassing, it doesn't work. And there was a previous picture from actual navigation site that shows a right angle sitting on top of the globe. It's as embarrassing as this one. Now, the next slide would show what a protractor is. And you can see it needs that 180 or 0 baseline. And then you've got the degrees there. Very similar. In fact, people have a homemade sextant by putting a straw, like a sipping straw. They tape it to that bottom baseline, and they tie a string with a weight, and they have a homemade sextant, and they just turn it upside down and look through the straw to get angles and so forth. But let's go to the diagrams. What do you notice in the first diagram what 0 is? Well, it's just a straight line. And then to get 30 degrees, 45 degrees, 60, 90, 110, 135, 180, 210. What do they all have in common is that base line, that straight line that you need to get a vertex. And obviously the vertex here is where the 2 lines meet. If you go to finish out the section on what angles are, it goes to 270, 315, and 360. So what do you need? A baseline. It needs to be flat all the way to the GP of the star or sun. And that's how you get an angle. And that's how a sextant works.
Perfect. This has been a really good show. So a decent amount of time on each of the housekeeping questions, along with a very concise explanation for how we can debunk the Earth as a sphere by way of utilisation of a sextant, which is an angle measuring device, and that angle measuring device's requirement for a flat baseline, something that is impossible to achieve on a sphere. So back to 10th Man's how a sextant cannot work. The baseline is what you require. That's what gives you 180 degrees to work from, to give you a vertex, to get an angle, to whatever you're triangulating with. In other words, the sextant is utilising a property of the surface of the ground in order to figure out where you are. And that property that it's utilising is a plane, a flat, level surface. That's what it's doing.
Yeah. And guess what the last instructions are for a navigator as he's plotting his position once he's used a sextant? I'm sending it over right now. This is off of a plotting sheet. As you can see at the very bottom, it says note, lines of position or the Sumner lines are always at right angles to the bearing or the azimuth of the celestial body. How can you do that right angle over a curve?
You can't.
Impossible. That's why it's the year of the sextant, 2021.
Could I ask to go to? I've just put a slide in, Master B, Nathan. It's one of 10 I've just scribbled on.
It's on.
So this is just the point I'm making there. You see, when you've got a straight line, that square that designates the right angle, you only draw a little square in the corner. It doesn't matter. You could draw that square wherever. The angle is the same. However, as we progress along this surface, you can see, look, if I go a little bit away.
Sorry, which slide am I on? Sorry.
So the last one, so it looks like tense, but I've put some red squiggles on it.
Oh, yes, I think I've got the right one now. Yes, how the sextant cannot work, but with extra squiggles, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you're on now. Sorry.
If we go to the point where it says 95, so if we go to that point on the surface, you can see that the angle is no longer 90. It's going to be about 95 degrees. We go across as we travel further and further to the observer's point, look, 100 degrees, 110 degrees is the reality of. So there isn't one angle along that straight line, you see, every different position. So by the time you get to the supposed position of the observer, you're looking at 120 degrees. Sorry.
Or to put it another way, it doesn't work on a curved surface, and it's going against the geometric properties that it's employing. That would be a straight baseline and a vertex with two straight lines. You can't do that on a curved surface. It does not work.
Not a triangle. Fundamentally, the geometry isn't representing a triangle. Therefore, you can't use the rules of internal angles of triangles to calculate anything or draw any inference from.
Anybody got any last comments on this?
Adam is way smart.
Yeah, this last image makes it pretty clear. It like puts away that slicing to the earth thing. It can't be slicing to the earth because then otherwise you're not looking straight up at the sun. Or whatever you call it, the zenith or something.
Yeah.
Right? Right. So, yeah, thanks, Adam. And 10th. And yeah, you too, Neil. Why not?
Anyone else got any comments? Because there is one last super chat shout out. It's been a cracking show. I agree. Retro Bill says great show today. Yeah, I totally agree. Please share the show, as this has been a very, very educational show today, which is great.
Oh, I'd say just before you move on. Sorry, then.
Go on, Brian.
No, go ahead.
You can have the last word.
Well, I think there's something else he wants to show, Nathan, so I don't know if I want to take his thunder.
Who, what, sorry?
Well, Yeah, I just listed another couple of slides there to validate what's been validated. One is a screen capture of a Navy site. It's a black and white one you could see, showing exactly what my slide shows, that you need a straight baseline that's 90 degrees, and that's how you get an angle, just like Adam just showed with the squiggly lines. So that might go a long way when you could show that picture from a Navy site.
Yeah, I've got that up.
Pretty
Yeah.
simple. Yeah, I mean, it's right there in front for everyone to see, right? So it's like, there's the boat, the navigator, or the ship in this case, and the GP of the sun is way off in the distance. You see a flat horizon line. You don't see any curvature here. You see an angle. You see a 90 degree. This is how Sextant works. It's a glorified protractor. And then the last slide, which is one of my favorites, is showing if the circle of equal altitude in 3 different ways as they cross each other for a fix. But from the last paragraph, we get some kernel of truths here. And it says, from this, a navigator knows he is on a specific circle along the plane. Notice the wording, the plane of the surface of Earth, of radius r, known as the line of position, LOP. He does not know his direction from this point. However, by examining a second star, a second radius can be deduced. The navigator now knows he's at one of the points where both the circular functions meet. In the case that there is only one real route, he knows his position. Although this is only possible, and here it comes, if the radii are parallel. It's over. I mean, this is that they give crummy drawings, as Adam and Brian showed, and then they show the good pictures like the Navy one, and then they break it down like here, all flat, all 90 degrees, and saying you need a radius from the GP of 3 stars to be parallel to each other, flat, ball game over.
Only work on a flat plane. It's utilizing a geometric aspect of flatness to work. Cannot work on a spherical surface because you don't achieve parallel lines from the GP to each star, and you can't acquire 90 degrees to the surface if it's curved. This only works on a flat plane and thoroughly debunks the globe. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared. This has been a really good show today. Subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley channel member and all that good stuff. Also, massive thanks to all of you who hit the PayPal link while the show was live. It really is appreciated. Although I stumbled over my words yesterday, it has indeed been a difficult month, so thank you very much for all of your support. Once again, stay tuned if you're watching on either premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!